I've never really been a big TV guy. I've always been more of a movie watcher. There's probably a few reasons for that. For one, a movie ultimately is about 1.5 hours, 2 hours of your life, so even if it's crap, it's not a great loss. As such, I'll watch practically anything, whether they be mainstream blockbusters or random films relegated to 3 a.m. slots on obscure film channels. With TV shows, I don't know, I just never really knew where to begin. I always want to finish what I start, so a show is always a bigger commitment than a film. I think one of the main reasons why I even started watching The Sopranos was because Frank Vincent was in it and I knew he would have a big role, and he was a guy I was familiar with from Martin Scorsese gangster movies. And of course, watching The Sopranos makes you appreciate the lengths TV can reach. It can go places where even movies cannot. The Sopranos gave me so much and still keeps giving, and after I had finished it, I wanted to start another good show, which is when my attention was brought to The Wire. I kept hearing this show's name crop up in the conversation of best TV shows, and it was a cop show, which sounded good to me, plus a show which followed gangsters in the drug trade, which was great. People said you would need to be patient with it, that the show starts slow but it builds to something great, but I had a great time with the first season. It was so different, it felt so real. You saw the intricacies of the way the police work, and it was clearly made by individuals with experience in such fields. And the narrative style of telling a story of the drug trade from the point of view of the dealers and simultaneously from the cops trying to catch them was novel and cool. The second season threw me a bit. All of a sudden, many of the key characters became secondary, and we got a new set of characters, a new focus for the season. But it was still a captivating drama and an excellent self-contained story. By the time you watch the third season, you realize the whole thing about adding new characters and a new focus is a theme of the show, with season 3 bringing in the world of politics, whilst also retaining that core group of characters from earlier seasons. It was really interesting, for example, seeing a villain like Burrell, who was such a resistant slab to the investigations of season 1, being given somewhat a sympathetic look, with it being shown many of his decisions were mandated by the mayor whom he is subjugated by. The street storyline involving Avon Barksdale and Stringer Bell reached its climax. Plots and details from earlier seasons were linked to, wrapped up, referenced and added to, highlighting the highly sophisticated nature of the show as it broadened its scope with each season. And you start to realize this is not a small story about drug dealers being told, but rather the dysfunctional institutions which are causing an entire city to fall. Those 3 seasons made for stunning television, but season 4, which bravely replaced the street characters with a new breed, in particular Marlo Stanfield, and which shone a light on a broken education system, was on another level, and shot the show into the stratosphere where it towers above almost anything else. And then season 5 comes along and wraps up the show nicely. I was blown away by the show. Nothing I've seen since has come close to scratching the itch, and the only series I'd put on the same level is The Sopranos. Unlike most shows, I feel like I've actually learned things watching The Wire. I understood a little more about the world because of it. It made me more empathetic. It made me think as I pass a homeless person, or a guy dealing drugs, or a person in a position of authority I see on TV who I consider inadequate and useless, that maybe there's another side to them. Maybe they have a story to be told and there's more to there than meets the eye. Maybe the homeless guy is a Bubbles who fell on hard times. Maybe the dealer is a Wallace who never knew any better. Maybe the man of authority is a Daniels who is hamstrung by the suits he answers to. Immediately after watching the show, I began making videos on it. This was in 2021. There was so much to discuss, so much to talk about. It was a fascinating show to talk about with people. And in general, the comment section of the Wire videos are fantastic. You can learn a lot from what people say in the comment section. There's a lot of insight there that increases your appreciation of the show, and I try to read every single comment. And I don't like to toot my own horn, but I think surely I've proven I do have an understanding of the show on a level. The amount of things we've discussed in videos, looking at characters, plots, arcs, down to minute details, and the brilliance of the show is something we share as a community who watch the show. Sure, there have been things I found strange, but all it takes is a bit of research. In my video on Brother Muzone, for instance, I said in the video itself that I initially found Brother a cartoonish character who felt out of place. But in that video, I said I was wrong after doing research on the Nation of Islam and such. That was all said in the video, but in spite of this, I did catch quite a bit of flack in the comment section. Maybe a lot of people stopped watching about halfway through. But what I'm really talking about today, what the title of this video is addressing, is a kind of comment that I've seen a few times. It's not frequent. The Wire community is fantastic in general, and you could make an argument that I would be better off ignoring such comments and moving on, not being triggered. But I just felt an inclination to respond today, and maybe we can all come away having learned something. And it's this kind of comment. I've had quite a few of these over the years. Why is a white guy talking about The Wire? White people don't understand The Wire. There's nothing a white guy can teach me about the hood, and variations of that kind. I could show you more examples, but it'd involve having to go through pages and pages of YouTube comments to find them. You're always going to get comments that you don't like as a YouTuber, but there's something about this kind of comment that really makes me shake my head. Something quite audacious and ridiculous about it. I'm not personally offended, but I do think these kind of comments are very problematic and quite frankly idiotic. Of course, if you are someone who has grown up and experienced a certain kind of lifestyle, and then along comes a TV show which depicts said lifestyle and shows the machinations that make such a lifestyle a norm for many people, and then comes along some random guys making videos on said show, it might rub you up the wrong way, especially if this guy, i.e. me, doesn't fully grasp certain elements, like the Brother Muzone character. And yes, The Wire is considered one of the first major, big-budget prestige shows with a black cast, focusing on issues that black people face. For sure, there's been one or two comments in the Sopranos comment section saying things like, why is this British guy talking about American culture? What does he know? But it's far more common for me to see this about The Wire, and unlike when Sopranos fans do it, it's specifically talking about skin colour. It's wrong on so many levels, and whenever it comes up, I just feel like rolling my eyes. I'll have come up with a video idea, rewatched parts of the show, done research, looked at interviews from actors, checked out the real life story, write my script, record my audio, edit my video, publish the video, and after all that, someone will come along, presumably not even watching the video, and just say, well, you're white, so your opinion isn't relevant when it comes to The Wire. It's being willfully ignorant. It's ignoring any points I might make and just simply looking at skin colour and being dismissed on account of that. And it's not as if I'm roasting the show. Here we are having constructive conversations about it, going in deep and hard on the characters and themes. And since when was The Wire just a show about black people? It's incredibly reductive to label it as such. The series is so much more. It rips apart the educational system, the print media, the political system, all of the different institutions and bureaucracies which hamper society's progress. And after watching all of that, if all you've taken from the show is that it's a black show, then quite ironically, maybe it's you who doesn't understand the show. There's a whole host of characters in the show, fully realised with arcs and storylines who are not black. Are we to dismiss them? Characters like McNulty don't exist? What about Frank Sabatka? I'm not hearing his name here. And even the systemic issues showcased in the show also include white characters, like Bubbles' friend, Johnny Weeks, or White Boy Rick. It's a really dumb argument. The Wire is now one of the most popular shows in the world. It's watched by all sorts of people. And the main contention I have with this line of thinking, the biggest issue I have with this form of gatekeeping, is that the unstated implication is that only a black person can understand the show. This is actually racist, and it's a bizarre form of racism directed at the person making the claim, because it's suggesting that black people are different, and that's why a white guy can't get the show, because for whatever reason, the series is only something a black person will get. Again, the self-defeating implication here is that black people are different from white people. There's a barrier there. And that's literally the argument that racist people throughout history who have demonized black people have made. You are making their argument for them. Instead of wanting people of other skin color and cultures experiencing The Wire and to understand things about this culture, it seems people like this would rather only black people watch The Wire, only Italian Americans watch The Sopranos, and nobody grows. Nobody gets new experiences, nobody learns, nobody talks to each other. Just a bunch of echo chambers where there's no outside voice to offer a different perspective. It reminds me of when some actor or Hollywood article, I can't remember, a few years back, made the argument that only gay actors should be playing gay characters. Such a ridiculous premise. Again, the implication is that gay people are somehow different to the rest of us. A straight person can't simply fathom the existence of gay people, so only fellow gays should be playing such roles. Plus, isn't it literally the job of actors to pretend to be things they aren't? Anyway, if a person is unfit to comment on the show by sheer virtue of his skin color, I must ask people who make comments like these, what if you had a black man who's grown up in privilege, grown up surrounded by wealth and education, inherited his wealth, doesn't know the cost of a pint of milk? Does he intrinsically understand the show better than a white guy who has grown up in poverty, who has gotten mixed up in drugs and crime? Should we dismiss the opinion of such a person, the second guy, the white guy? Another reason why I found this complaint so mind-numbing is because David Simon, the man who created the show, is white. He's not a black guy. There's a delicious irony in some people holding the show as something exclusive for black people when the man who made it was white. The show's second most prominent writer, Ed Burns, is also white. Should David Simon be banned from talking about The Wire, his own show? You know, this kind of thing reminds me of something. I have friends from African countries, Middle Eastern countries, and the subcontinent. Some of these guys are very nationalistic. Take somebody I know from Somalia, for instance, or Bangladesh. There's nothing wrong with being proud of your country, but I know Bangladeshis who hate Indians, Indians who hate Pakistanis, Pakistanis who hate Afghans, and it goes on and on, by sheer virtue of where they were when their mothers gave birth to them. But they all collectively denounce things like colonialism and other tragedies that their countries have experienced in the past collectively. I find great humour in reminding such people that the borders of their countries that they are so vehemently defending in jingoistic fashion, which they go on and on about, were carved up and shaped by the very colonizers they despise, sometimes intentionally to further division and hatred between different groups, and sometimes offhandedly on a map with their hands, just forming entire countries at leisure. Just Google Sykes-Picot for a very interesting history lesson. I mean, just look at a map of Africa. Look at the straight line at the bottom of Algeria, the 90-degree corner of Mali, multiple 90 degrees in Sudan. Do you think these are natural borders? Of course not. They were created by people who should have had nothing to do with these countries, who split up families, communities, tribes, and cultures through these invisible borders. I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but like The Wire is a black show created by a white guy, these modern nation states of people of colour were created by white people who'd never set foot there. Except in Simon's case, it's a man who did an incredible amount of research and knew the problems that the kind of characters who are in the show faced. So instead of bickering and arguing amongst ourselves, playing this strange game of gatekeeping, this idea that the show is mine and it belongs to me and not you, is ridiculous and it doesn't help anyone. Rather, everyone should watch The Wire. It should be pushed far out and wide so everyone can see it, so more people can talk about it and be influenced, be inspired by it, learn from it. And you know what the craziest thing about this is? The balmiest reason why this complaint about me as a white guy should not be talking about The Wire is? My slam dunk argument, my ace in the hole? I'm not even white.